Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Spark. I'm Coach David. Hope you're doing great today. Hope everything is moving in the right direction for you, that you have that positive mindset, that you're moving forward, knowing this right here, that you are the architect of your life. And somebody wrote a great book about that. And so you are the architect of your life. And here's the thing about it, you got to design it, build it, because you're going to live it. So since you have to live it, might as well make a decision that it's going to be your very best life. So, hey, once again, thank you for being here. Go ahead and hit that like button, hit that, subscribe button, whatever button you got there, hit it because I want you to be a part of this great thing that's going on where we're inspiring everybody to move forward each and every day. We give them a spark on primarily on Sunday, and then we spark you all week long with that, keeping you focused. We're also on TikTok. We're also on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. We're all those places. And so go and look for us, Inspiring Innovation with Coach David. I want to encourage you to do that. Today, today I want to get into something new. And we're still talking about that growth mindset. But today I want you to do something for me. I want you to challenge your thoughts. Now, this is a big part of the growth mindset when you begin to challenge your thoughts. So let's kind of break this down and everything, because everything you think doesn't necessarily line up with the growth mindset. So what we want to begin to do, we want to look at that and we want to begin to challenge your thoughts. So let's start with some definitions. What is a thought? Well, a thought is nothing more than an idea. It's an opinion that's produced by thinking, or something that, suddenly occurs in your mind. Like you get this idea, you get this quote unquote thought that happens very suddenly in your mind. So if that is the case, it's produced by thinking, I really need to ask the question, what is thinking? Now, thinking is the process where you're using your mind to consider or to reason about something. You're considering something, you're reasoning about it, you're musing over it, you're looking at it. So we got to understand that this one key part, though, you're using your mind. So I asked three questions as we get into this. Number one, whose mind is it? Who is using it? And therefore, who is in control? I'm going to ask those three questions again because I really want you to consider this as we're talking about challenging your thoughts. Whose mind is it? Who's using it? Who's in control? So now let's get into now within each and every one of us, there's something called the inner critic. That's that little voice you hear in your head. You've heard me refer to it as the enemy in me. Now, truthfully, the inner critic is for your safety. What do I mean by that? Well, that little voice is the fight or flight impulse that lives within you. In other words, when you come up against something that could be dangerous or something that could be embarrassing or something that could cause you to fail, that inner critic stands up and begins to talk. The inner critic is trying to protect you, trying to shield you from embarrassment, trying to protect you from danger, trying to protect you from failure. However, the critical part of that is it also limits you because it does not want you to go into those areas. And that's a good thing, that you have something within you that doesn't want you to fail. You have something within you that doesn't want you to be embarrassed. You have something in you that, says, hey, look, this is dangerous. Now, those are good things. I don't want to take away from that. Even though I call it the enemy in me, now I'm going to talk about why I say that it's the enemy in me. Because see, the growth mindset sees challenges and it says, hey, even to the degree of failure, this is a way to grow. Okay, what do you mean? Well, I've already told you that when challenges come up, the growth mindset accepts a challenge and says, "Hey, here's an opportunity for me to grow." The growth mind says that even if I fail, that failure is a path to growth. Why? Because I learn, I grow, I get better. So what I've got to do with this inner critic, I've got to learn to challenge my inner critic by questioning if this really a threat, or is this something that I'm being challenged by that I need to go forth in that even I can grow. Now, I talked about this one time before. Me, I jumped out of perfectly good airplanes. Now, you got to ask yourself the question, why would a person do this? Now, the entire time I'm preparing and getting ready to jump out of a perfectly good airplane, that inner critic in the inside of me is saying, you do not want to do this. But I had to challenge that in order to become jump certified. I had to challenge that and say, you know what? The safety features are built in. I've been trained, I've practiced, so I'm okay. And so now I could have let that inner critic stop me, or I could have challenged those thoughts, those questions, those ideas, and said, you know what? In accordance with this, I'm okay to do this. Now, could something have happened to me? Yeah, because it's dangerous. But I also understood that my training kicked in. I also understood that I was well prepared to jump out of a perfectly good airplane. So I want to give you that kind of understanding that that inner critic is there. I call it the enemy in me, only if you let it stop you after you question certain things. So that's where it's at. So now I want to jump back just a little bit. I asked you 3 questions. I said, whose mind is it? I said, who's using it? And who is in control? Well, the answer to that is always you and I. It's our mind. We're using it, and we are in control of our mind. Now, you can let your mind run rampant. Don't get me wrong. You can let your mind do a whole lot of things. But the truth of the matter is that you are in control of your mind. You have to understand that, and you have to, take control of that and say, look, okay, I get it that you want me to be safe. Thank you. That you don't want me to be embarrassed. I appreciate that. That you don't want me to fail, because I don't want to fail either. However, I'm going to challenge those thoughts in my mind because I am in control. Now, since it is my mind and I'm using it and I'm in control, I challenge those thoughts. Why? Because in order to come to a higher level of thinking, a higher level of action, a higher level of anything concerning me in my life, I've got to challenge those thoughts. The Bible says this right here. The Bible says that we take every thought captive to God's word. Now, like I said so many times, you may not believe the Bible, but I believe it. And I believe that you can take things captive because there are things within your very own self, within your mind, that are keeping you from having the best that you could have. So what you have to do, you got to look at that and you got to say, no. I am not going to allow this to limit me. I am going to look at this and I am going to level up. And so what that means, I'm going to the next level. So you got to understand how to do that. And that's what Coach David is going to do with the remaining time that I have. I'm going to share with you how to do this. But the very first thing that I want you to capture out of this, that this is a war for your mind. You have got to see this. This is a battlefield of the mind. And you're at war, and though you have these thoughts that are coming that are trying to keep you from the best. Yes, they're trying to keep you safe. Don't get me wrong. They're trying to keep you from being embarrassed, and they're trying to keep you from failing. But we've already talked about that, and we know that we got to challenge those thoughts. We got to look at them and say, wait a minute, is this keeping me from my next level, or is this keeping me from, dying a horrible death? And I hate to say it that way, but that's just the truth of the matter. So let me give you my 7 R's of how to win the war with your mind. Okay. Now, you own your mind. You know you do. Okay. It's yours, but you got to learn how to work your mind in such a way to get you to your next level. So here's my first R. The first R is to recognize thoughts that don't align with who you are. And so just yesterday, I was talking to one of my students, and I was challenging her because she was saying certain things about herself. And I was like, no, that's not true, because I see you in a different light. You've got to be able to understand that that does not align with who you are. That does not align with your performance. That does not align with the actions that you are taking. So what you got to do, you got to recognize those thoughts, and you got to recognize the negative thoughts that don't align with who you are. After you do that, you go to the second R, which is realize. Realize that this is coming from your brain. This is not you. Because many times what we will do, remember I said from the very beginning that this thing may occur suddenly in your mind, this thought. And what you got to recognize is that that's coming from your brain. That's not you. You can't take on the personification of every thought that comes in. I heard a guy say it like this one time. He said, you can't do anything about the birds flying over your head, but you can certainly do something about a bird landing on the top of your head and building a nest. That's those thoughts, and you can stop that. You can tear that down. You can change that, but you've got to realize where they're coming from. The birds fly over your head all the time. You can't really do anything about the birds flying over your head, okay, because there's so many of them. However, you don't have to let that thought come to rest. You don't have to own that thought. You don't have to take it in. So you got to realize where these thoughts are coming from and recognize this is not you. The next thing you got to do is relabel the thoughts that are untrue of you. You got to call it out. That is not me. That is untrue. Even though, listen, even though I may have that thought suddenly appear, I may have that idea or that opinion, I still have to realize and relabel it. That's not me. That is not me. Okay. I'm far better than that. That's what I tell people all the time. I know that's not your best. You are far better than that. So you've got to relabel and say, okay, yep, that's right. I'm relabeling this. That is not me. The next R, the fourth one, is to renew. What do you mean? Get yourself some new thoughts of yourself. Get yourself some new thoughts of yourself. And when you begin to do that, that is the process of what in the Bible it calls renewing your mind, making your mind new again, getting new thoughts, getting new ideas, getting new opinions of yourself. Excuse me. Only you can do that. And you have to make a decision that I'm going to do that. The current situation may be this or that or whatever the case may be. But you have to understand this right here, that you can renew your mind by getting a new thought pattern going about yourself and understanding that there's more potential in you, that you are far better than you think you are. And then when you start thinking differently, you will start to get the new thoughts, the new ideas, the new opinions. After you do that, now what you're going to do, you're going to reframe. That's number 5. You're reframing. What do you mean? You're seeing yourself as this new person that you have pulled in. You've renewed yourself. So now you got to see yourself that way. Now, listen, this is a challenging thing because a lot of times when we start to renew and reframe, we don't see the outcome of that yet. But if you just stay with it, there's something called persistence. Stay persistent in what you're doing, you're going to begin to see the new person show up. Now, I want to give you a warning right here. I want to give you a warning. A lot of people think that the climb is just straight like this. It's not. It's not like that. When you are renewing, when you are reframing, it'll start out like that, and you may have a little dip. You've heard this before. It may get worse before it gets better. But if I stick with the persistence, I am going to come up out of that dip, and I'm going to be okay. Do not allow yourself to be shut down by a little dip. It's going to happen. It may look like it's getting worse before it gets better. Oh, man, I just want to get this to you so you can understand that when this is that little dip is where most people quit and they go all the way back to the beginning. And I like to use this analogy. It's like taking a test. You are going to continue to be retested and retested and retested until you pass that test. And if you get to that little dip every time and you quit, you got to go all the way back. And now you got to go through it again. So here's what I want to encourage you with. When you are renewing, when you are reframing and you see that little dip, you should get excited. Why? Because it's going to get a little worse before it gets better. But here's what I do understand. I understand this right here, that if I will keep the persistence up, oh my goodness, I'm going to be good to go. I am going to come out of this and I'm going to go on the climb. This is where number 6 comes in. Remind. What do you mean? Consistently reminding yourself about your new self. Listen, talk to yourself. Remind yourself just how good you are, just how great you are, how you're moving in a new direction. Talk to yourself. When nobody else won't pat you on the back, you reach back there and you pat yourself on the back and you tell yourself you're doing great. You're moving in the right direction. Oh, yeah, I had a little drop off, but that's okay. I'm climbing out of the drop off and I am going to get better. I'm going to get consistently better. And I'm going to continue to be this great person. This is number 7. Revalue yourself. See, with new thoughts come a new valuation of who you really are. So you've gone through and you've renewed, you refrain, you remind yourself, and now you revalue yourself. You are that person. Because remember this right here. When you're challenging your thoughts, you're taking on new thoughts. When you take on new thoughts, you're going to see new outcomes. And that's what it's all about. In the growth mindset, you have to challenge your thoughts. It's a war for your mind. But I promise you that if you stay persistent and you take those 7 R's, you are going to be on the level, moving up. So my call to action for you on today is twofold. Number one, remember that it is a war for your mind and that you are going to win. Number 2, use the 7 R's and get after it. And I want you to do one other thing for me. Share this with somebody. Share this with somebody. People need to hear this because listen, no matter what's going on in our world, no matter what people tell you and everything, it's what you believe about yourself. That's the most important. All right. So thank you so much for being here with me on today and sharing with this and challenging your thoughts. Now, this is an ongoing process. You can't do this one day and then, oh, yeah, I'll do it 3 months later. You got to continually do it. So I want to encourage you to do that. Remember this right here. Remember this. You are the architect of your life. And I'm Coach David, and I believe in you. I will see you on next week. You have a great week all week long. Bye.